Hi, my name is Zosha Di Castri. I'm a Canadian composer currently based in New York. And I'm really excited to introduce to you my new work, In the Half-Light. It's a song cycle in 7 movements, which will be premiered this week by the Toronto Symphony Orchestra and Barbara Hannigan. I'm so excited to hear it come to life. I worked together with a friend of mine, Tash Ah. He's a Malaysian writer whom I met in Paris a few years ago. And so it feels like a special project because of these personal ties to both Barbara and Tash and the collaborative experience. So a little bit about the inspiration behind the work. When we started out, we had some general themes that we were interested in exploring, and these sort of revolved around the idea of displacement, belonging, and home, since we thought that these were all sort of universal topics that people could relate to. So if you've ever traveled, you've had the experience of going from place A to place B and both the excitement that that brings, but also the potential disorientation of being in a new environment. This could also be interpreted for anyone who has moved or who has migrated, either by choice or who's been forced to migrate. And we're interested in really understanding or exploring further what happens when we transfer from one place to another. How do we experience this uprooting, and how do we adjust to our new environments? I think maybe also living through the pandemic has been a moment where we consider home in a new way, and also maybe long for those that are difficult to visit at periods when we would have maybe just assumed that would have been an easier thing. In terms of the music, it explores this sort of threshold between darkness and light that the title suggests. So the space where really anything could happen. And I think that there's hope there, but also a sense of memory and maybe nostalgia and longing at certain moments. At the beginning of the process, Tash had given us a prompt where he said, what is a place that's significant to you and why? Either something that was disturbing or something that had important emotional resonance. And Barbara had these really beautiful anecdotes about being a touring artist, and what that experience is like, at certain periods of time, not really having a home base, just being on the go all the time, living, having dresses in a storage unit, and the experience of realizing that in the neighboring storage unit there were people who were actually living there. So also having a sort of transient lifestyle, but living a very completely different experience from her own. And she also spoke about her experience helping in a supportive capacity a young Afghan refugee when he came to Europe. So these stories sort of became intertwined in the text in a way. Tash has his own experience of moving from Malaysia to the UK and then eventually to France, and myself moving around as well. And at the time, shortly after I received the text from Tash, actually, one of my uncles, Matthew Di Castri, passed away very unexpectedly. So I was also looking at the text from that lens, thinking of sort of this threshold of crossing over, and what that might mean, and studying his paintings in a lot of detail too. So I had this sort of sketch, not that it's important to understand the piece, but there were certain paintings I had associated with different movements and that I was looking at as I was evoking the mood for each movement of the piece, I guess. One moment that I would say you could listen for in particular, and that I'm excited to hear, is the 6th movement. So it sort of emerges out of this warped, distant train sounds of clocks, and eventually all of this chaos dies down to a simple duo, just 2 people playing in the hall. There's a very beautiful melody that Barbara sings, and the timpanist plays prepared timpani using clock chimes, so striking the rods on the drum and using the pedal to warp the sound. So we get this sort of distorted grandfather clock accompaniment. So I'm excited to hear that moment, and that's something you can listen for. In terms of the collaboration, this was really just such a wonderful team to work with, since it was so personalized and artistically rewarding. We had many Zoom calls, correspondences, emails, and Barbara and I met in New York also to go through the vocal part together. So I'm really excited about what that brings to the work. And you'll notice that the text is mainly in English, but there are some lines that are in French. And there are also some non-semantic text moments where Barbara is evoking sounds of nature or just really expressing that which cannot be expressed in words. And I hope that this beautiful libretto that Tash has written will strike you in the same way that has inspired me, as I think it's really rich to be interpreted in many, many different ways, and will hopefully resonate with audiences in Toronto as well. All right, thanks so much, and I can't wait to be there for the premiere this week. I hope you will join us.